Hi, I'm Doug Draper with Acme Distribution and the Denver Transportation Club, and I'm pleased to present our series, Supply Chain and Logistics, the Storytellers. This series is brought to you by Cap Logistics. Cap Logistics, they're experts in customizing transportation solutions for all of your needs, so please visit caplogistics.com today. So I think we have an awesome topic today. We're going to talk about trailer technology and the Internet of Things related kind of to equipment management. So we wanted to bring on our guest, Aaron Huff. He's with the Commercial Carrier Journal, and we're excited to have him on the show. So Aaron, welcome.
Thanks, Doug. It's a pleasure to be with you.
That's great. Tell us a little bit about yourself before we jump into the topic. We like to really learn about our guests and our storytellers. So let the audience know a little bit about yourself.
Okay, sure. So I've been with Commercial Carrier Journal, or CCJ, for going on 19 years. And early on, probably in the early 2000s, I remember attending a conference, and I heard someone say that the information about a load has become more important than the load itself. So really from that point on, I really tried to focus on technology, studying some trends and some of the latest features that companies are using to get information. And it's interesting because the Internet of Things really probably started in the trucking industry with telematics and mobile communications, which went back to the early 90s.
Huh.
So I live and work in Provo, Utah, but my home office is in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And just something, I guess, a fun fact about myself is I have a twin brother, identical twin brother. So we frequently run into people who think they know us, but they really don't. They're thinking of the other person.
Oh, nice. I bet there's some. Does he live out there with you as well?
Yeah, he lives about a half hour away.
All right. Well, you can't switch up in the middle of our conversation today. That's all I ask. Okay.
Right. Okay.
Good deal. Cool. Well, as I mentioned, we're going to talk about trailer technology and the Internet of Things and kind of how that's evolved. So let's just start real simple. And when I use the term and we say trailer technology, what does that actually mean? And maybe you could talk about why that's important from a carrier perspective, and then we could talk a little bit about from a user's perspective. So what does trailer technology mean?
Okay, sure. So I guess just a little bit of background. For the last probably year or two, I know the transportation industry has been really focused on electronic logs, and so the trailer technology has kind of taken a back seat for the last year or so, but now a lot of attention is turned to the trailer. And trailer technology, I think in terms of what is being referred to as the smart trailer, so like a central hub on a trailer that can collect data from sensors and using GPS and other technology on board the trailer to collect that data, make sense of it, and then present it to a fleet owner or manager who and then in turn presents it to their shipper customers.
Got it. Yeah, that's great. So let's kind of look at this technology from two perspectives. So let's talk about from the carrier perspective. So whenever you say it's the smart trailer, like what type of information are they sending back? So my guy's on the road making a delivery across Utah, and there's information the trailer's sending back. Like what type of information is that? And then what are people doing with it? Like why do we care?
Yeah, sure. So there's a lot of information, and we're obviously GPS tracking, and also some of the other common information that people are getting from these systems are temperatures, cargo sensors, which detect the presence or absence of cargo, and we can maybe get into that a little more because there's more advanced systems coming out that can actually take pictures of the inside of the trailer to detect not only if cargo's there or not, but if there's space remaining, and maybe even detect damages to the trailer. So that's one of the issues is when companies are loading and unloading trailers, they may ding the trailer, hit the walls, but now we have a way to detect where that came from, right?
Yeah.
And also you can collect information such as tire pressures, door status, open or closed, and there's also a way to detect if a light is not working. You can connect through the electrical system of the trailer. Also, you can even detect the status of brakes. Like there's sensors that know how much that cam is turning on the brakes to know if they're getting close to being worn out or not.
Wow.
So a lot of predictive maintenance data you can collect.
Yeah, that's great. So on those, the examples you gave, so let's say that the trailer's going down the road and the tire's a little bit low, and then all of a sudden they hit a pothole and the trailer door opens. So who gets that information? Is the driver being notified? Is it being relayed back to a dispatcher? And then what do they do with that information?
Yeah. So in nearly all cases, the driver's not getting information. The only instance I know where the driver's getting information, well, there are cases where, yeah, the driver will be notified of a low tire, low pressure. But maybe the only other instance I can think of that a driver would receive information is, like if the reefer temperature is out of whack, and typically they can already see that just by looking at the trailer. It has a light on the reefer that will tell them that. So the information will go to the fleet manager. Depending on the size of the company, they may have an officer who's focused on the trailers, whether it's maintenance or for operations. But a lot of cases it's just somebody's getting an alert, an email alert,
right,
that there's a problem.
And is that alert in real time, or is it delayed? I mean, what's the signal? So all of a sudden, I just got notified that the trailer door's open. How does that get to a dispatcher that might be in Mobile, Alabama?
Okay, so obviously there's a lot of information that could be sent, but companies are only worried about the exceptions. I mean, they don't need to know if a trailer door is open or closed unless it's, not where it should be and the trailer door is opened. I mean, if a trailer door is opened at the dock to unload, they really don't need to know that a trailer door is open.
Sure.
So yeah, that information is going to a dispatcher who is in charge of, that load, that specific load.
Yeah, gotcha. And I'm assuming that maintenance records and things would be kept. So, hey, the right rear tire has been flat for the last couple of hours, and we fixed it last week, and it keeps getting flat. Would the dispatcher be able to say, hey, exit 295 above, turn off, and go talk to Billy's shop to get it fixed? Is it that level yet, where they can provide direction based on the information they get?
Yeah, there are some companies that have their information to that point, but I think mostly companies are just looking at alerts and then figuring it out. What do we do at that point? Getting to that point of automation is it would be great, but it's just a matter of priorities.
Yeah.
Is that really what they want to spend their time on when it probably doesn't happen that often?
Yeah, exactly.
So.
Managing to the exception can get costly at times for sure. So.
Oh, exactly.
Gotcha. So that data can be used for fleet management, safety, maintenance. So let's flip over to kind of the customer side. So, yeah, I'm glad that the truck's safe and it's getting there, but I'm really concerned to make sure my stuff is safe, secure, and it's going to be here on time. So what type of trailer technology is being used so the shipper or the recipient, from the customer-facing perspective? Talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So obviously a customer probably isn't going to be worried about every second of movement for a load. They do, however, want to know in advance if a load is going to be late.
Right.
So what I've been seeing is companies notifying companies, meaning transportation companies, notifying their customers if a load is going to be late as soon as they know. They automatically give their customer an update saying this load is going to be late. It may be an hour or 2 hours before it was scheduled to arrive, but they will let them know in as soon as possible.
Right.
And also companies. Some companies I know of are taking the tracking information from the tractor, combining it with the tracking information of the trailer to get even more real time. Typically a trailer may not report for its position for every 15 minutes, whereas if you can combine that with the tractor information, they're tethered together and heading in the same direction. You can get down to really maybe minute by minute information if needed.
Right. Right.
So also, companies are providing their customers with information about load times, how long it takes them to unload the trailer. Are they detaining their drivers? Is just any other type of exception that is either important to the carrier or the shipper.
Right.
they're providing that.
Yeah, I could see that really being impactful because there's so many scenarios, and it's happening as we speak right this second, where there's a lot of finger pointing. Hey, he held me up for 2 hours. No, I didn't. Why are you late? I missed this connection. And you're saying that technology can bridge the gap or really shake out what the real issue was. That's kind of what you're saying, correct?
Yeah, correct. And you can get down even to more granular level. Like, what time did the trailer arrive? What time did it move to the dock? How long did it take to load it? And if you're at a rail yard, like if you're doing intermodal, you can say, okay, the trailer's there, but is it at the location where they actually load and unload containers? Like, how long is it just sitting there? No one's moving it to that location. You can, provide customers with information that could be helpful to them to improve their operations.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's great. Yeah, and you kind of alluded into one of my next topics is we're thinking of a 53-foot dry van or a 53-foot reefer trailer, but there's got to be other applications with tankers and rail cars and things of that nature. You mentioned about an ocean container comes in, it sits, and the customer's like, hey, why isn't it on the rail yet? I'm waiting for it, and you'll be able to say, oh, it's at slot 52, and it's still on the dock. What about tankers and chemical type of equipment? Have you seen any advancements related to those type of moves?
Well, just the fact that they're using these systems on tankers is kind of surprising because it's kind of difficult to install these. You can't sit them up, you can't locate them on top of the trailer because people are walking up there.
Right.
So anyway, but with tankers, I've talked to some companies that have sensors on their tankers. I guess it would call them flow meters, I guess. Mm-hmm. So they know how many gallons were dropped off by location, so they can keep track of that. That helps to automate their billing, so the driver's not having to manually record that information on tickets that they then take back to the office for billing. But capture that information right there by stop is something I'm seeing with tankers. But a lot of the growth has been in refrigerated trailers and containers. You're probably familiar with the Food Safety Modernization Act that now made it possible for a shipper to say, if there's a problem, if you don't follow my load instructions, I can reject this load. Before, it was when the load showed up, if there's something wrong, they would do a visual inspection and reject it. But now they can go back and look at the data record, and if the temperature was not kept within range or anything is out of whack, they can reject that load just on the basis of the data not matching what their instructions are. So
interesting.
Yeah, that's been really,
and who would provide that information? Would that be the shipper? So they want to know, are they going to their provider, the trucking company itself, and says, hey, I want to, is that where they're getting the info?
Yeah, they're getting the information from the trucking company. They're like, give me a data download of this load from this time of day, or when you picked it up to when you deliver it. I want to see the whole status of the load.
Right. Yeah.
And also, but not only shippers but brokers are asking for that information as well, just to since they're in the middle of the transaction.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, everybody just wants, information is powerful, and whether it comes from the asset or the broker, I think, is kind of irrelevant from a shipper's perspective. Yes. So that's good that that's being embraced. One of the you just touched. First of all, you're phenomenal because all the questions I'm going to ask, you seem to lead into them perfectly. So thank you for that. One question that I was going to jump into was supply chain security, and I mentioned that because you had talked about being able to track, especially with perishables or consumables and things of that nature. So being able to say, where was it? Was the temperature altered? Did it have any impact? Things of that nature. So talk a little bit about how this technology is being used in security, the supply chain security aspect.
Okay. So I think I may have mentioned this earlier, but anytime there's an event that doesn't match the plan for the shipment, whether it's a door opening during the route, during transit, or perhaps the temperature is out of range, or anything that doesn't match the shipper's instructions, that can now be detected and alerted and send an alert to either the customer or the carrier. But I would say, for the most part, I would say that when we're talking about information technology, it's reactive, right? I mean, you're not really preventing a theft from happening. You're reacting to something that has already occurred, and as quickly as you can. There's some. You can also create like a geo corridor, they call it, along a route. So if a asset departs from that route, you'll know it immediately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, geofencing. I think I've heard that term before. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, it's similar to geofencing, but instead of geofencing like a location, you're basically putting a geofence along the entire route, the planned route. So as soon as it deviates from that route by, X percent of miles or even X miles, you can get an immediate alert.
Gotcha. This just popped in my head, so I don't apologize if you know the answer and if you don't. So in that you've just geofenced the entire route, and all of a sudden your truck takes a right-hand turn at Albuquerque, and hey, what are you doing? There's not a reply. All of a sudden he's 50 miles off the track, 100 miles off the track.
Yeah.
He's heading to Mexico or some other. You're like, this has to stop right now. Is there technology that enables a dispatcher or somebody that's remotely to say, I'm turning the truck off?
Yes, they do have technology where you can shut down the truck. That technology is not available in your typical, telematics device. There are a couple vendors I know of that have that technology where they can shut down the truck. It's not just immediately shut it down. It's kind of derate it, slow down the speed for a period, and then if it still doesn't stop, slow it down some more, and then eventually bring it to a stop.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
The only company I know that does that is called Magtech, and I don't think they have a whole lot of units out there. You pay quite a bit of premium for that type of technology.
Yeah. I was going to say, and then I wanted to jump in a little bit about the technology and who's actually providing this, right? So if I'm a large LTL or full truckload carrier, are they doing this in-house, or are they buying it off-the-shelf technology? Like, who's creating all the cool stuff that's out there? Talk about that a little bit, if you don't mind.
Sure, and there's been quite a bit of consolidation in the last few years, but the biggest companies, I believe, today are Orbcom, Skybits. I think Skybits has probably 30-40% of the market, at least, so they're pretty big. Spirion, BlackBerry, who that name should sound familiar, but
sure.
They've got into trailer tracking. They've created a device that actually mounts on the trailer door, and it has like 7 built-in sensors. They can monitor door status, temperature, humidity, cargo presence, cargo status. So they've come out with a pretty interesting device. There's some others, like smaller ones like Cortex. So yeah, I think I mentioned about 5 so far. Those 5 are the predominant players.
Gotcha. And what's the how cost effective or the prohibitive? It's all it's very cool stuff, but the question is, is this like $5,000 to retro a trailer, or talk a bit about the barrier to entry on a financial perspective?
Yeah. So the cost is anywhere for the hardware itself, maybe anywhere from like $200 to maybe even $600 or $700, depending on what type of add-ons you want, whether it's a cargo sensor, maybe door sensors. So somewhere in that range, $200 to $700, and then your monthly data costs are going to be anywhere from like $15 a month, maybe up to $30. So it's pretty affordable. In fact, one company, U.S. Express, they're one of the largest truckload carriers. They told me that in the last 3 years they've been using, I believe they're using the Skybit system, but they've been able to reduce their trailer fleet through more efficient use of their assets from I think 17,000 to 14,000 trailers. So that's 3,000 trailers they took out of their fleet. Just that's, you figure, probably $100 million of savings just right there, just by not needing as many trailers.
Yeah.
So you can justify it pretty easily. Plus, if you save a load by proactively monitoring maybe the temperature, if you can save a load of cargo, that's a lot of money you saved right there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you're right. You really have to take a perspective of maybe the indirect benefit. I would not have thought that just by managing your assets more closely and know where they are, that you could do your job effectively with less assets. I mean, it seems like common sense, but that's probably pretty interesting. So are you seeing some early adapters with this? Are there certain type of companies? Is it mostly large sectors that are saying, hey, we're going to get into this, or are you seeing kind of mom and pop and 3-4 trailer operations embracing the technology as well? Talk about that a little bit.
Well, the earlier adopters, you probably have to go back to the early 2000s, and some of those systems were pretty clunky, and I don't think that companies that adopted were too happy with them. Mm-hmm. But at this point, I would say the earlier adopters were the refrigerated carriers, since they had more of a need to monitor the temperatures. But dry van carriers, even tankers, intermodal carriers, there's systems out there for any type of equipment now. So,
right.
But I would say the larger fleets were the early adopters, but they've helped bring down the price and make it more competitive for everyone else.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say is, do you think it's becoming commoditized a little bit, where the price will be almost free hardware and the service will be in the monitoring aspect of it?
Yeah, that's a good point, because there's one company, Skybits, they've been doing this for a couple of years, but now it's just a subscription. They cover the hardware. You basically, like, you're paying for a subscription, and they will supply the hardware, and if the hardware breaks or maybe they have a new update, they'll replace that hardware. So in that sense, yes, it's become a little commoditized. So companies aren't so worried about the cost of the hardware. They're more concerned about what's my monthly cost going to be. Let's just put it all into one subscription. You take care of everything, so I don't have to manage the equipment or worry about upgrades, all that.
Yeah.
But I think the one thing that's helping it from not becoming a commodity is just the fact that there's devices for any type of equipment, whether it's tanker, refrigerated, intermodal. It's not. If it were just all for dry van, for example, I think it would become commoditized. but since there's a variety of equipment types, and a lot of fleets are diversified, so they may have different, they might have a mixed fleet of equipment,
right.
Tankers, dry vans, refrigerated. They can now use one vendor to provide devices for all that equipment and just have one subscription.
Yeah. Well, it's like so many things in the world. It's becoming the software as service, I think, is a term that's out there. So it makes total sense. So we've talked about trailers specifically, and in the next minute and a half or so, let's talk about the Internet of Things, and maybe just kind of paint a picture 5 years down the road, like what kind of cool stuff's coming out there that will really impact the industry.
Well, as far as the tractor, maybe just talking about that for a second, these camera systems, they not only can capture video of safety events, but they can also monitor driver behaviors, complex driver behaviors, fatigue, distraction. They can also look at what's happening outside the trailer, whether it's maybe the driver is not doing a good job of, if he's a fuel hauler, maybe he's being a little sloppy in how he hooks up to the underground tanks or something. They can monitor all this stuff. But as far as Internet things on the trailer, I think probably one of the next big developments will be, like I mentioned earlier, cargo sensors that can detect how much maybe capacity is remaining in the trailer. Are you filling that trailer up? Could you perhaps put on some more freight if you knew how much is actually of your trailers are actually being used? Also take pictures of the inside of the trailer, send those pictures back to dispatch. And maybe even communication between the trailer and the dock, so that when a truck arrives, you may have a robotic system that loads and unloads trailers. I've seen some of those out there.
Yeah.
And also predictive maintenance, being able to predict when a part will wear down and need to be replaced based on, not only your analysis of your fleet's data, but the whole industry.
Yeah.
So some of that stuff's coming.
Yeah, that's kind of George Jetson type stuff there. It's it's an amazing industry that you and I are both involved with. That's been terrific. So anyway, I really appreciate your insight and your feedback today. It's been great. So Aaron, thank you so much for joining the Storytellers today.
Well, thank you, Doug. It was a pleasure to be a part of it.
Excellent. And thank all of you for joining us today on the Connect and Collaborate Network, featuring supply chain logistics, the Storytellers, brought to you by Cap Logistics. So thank you very much.